Good morning. We're going to talk today about a recap of ancient Greece and the establishment of the Hellenistic era because of a guy by the name of Alexander the Great. You need to take Cornell notes, and you are responsible for the information on in this video. This is ancient Greece. We've talked about them. We talked about them along with Persia, and the mountains in the geography of ancient Greece played a big factor in it. They divided Greeks into independent states. Some of these include places like Athens, Sparta, Corinth, and you can see there was no unified or centralized government. It was a decentralized area. In ancient Greece, because the sea increased trade and cultural diffusion from other cultures, there was constant movement going in and out of this area. The legacy of ancient Greece includes their culture, their arts, their government, and their science and technology. Things such as, we talked about the mythology, the Greek Olympic Games, the invention of the classical drama and comedy, things like Euclid developing geometry, the idea of pi, all these things were part of ancient Greece. Because the wealth and innovation that took place there, it became a very important target for outside groups, particularly the Persians. The Greeks, the Persian kings attacked the Greeks. Darius and Xerxes tried but failed to conquer the Greeks in what we call the Persian Wars. This is when Athens and Sparta had to unite to protect Persia from taking over ancient Greece. However, after the Persian Wars took place, Athens and Sparta went into a civil war against each other. We talked about this in class, the Peloponnesian War. It was a civil war between Athens and Sparta, and the Peloponnesian War left the Greeks very weak and open to invasion. The Spartans won the war. However, it opened the door for outside resources or entities to come in and try to take over ancient Greece. Because of this, a group called the Macedonians in 338, led by Philip II, attacked and conquered the Greeks. The Macedonia was located north of Greece, brought all of Greek city-states under his control, and eventually his son, Alexander the Great, went on to conquer most of the Mediterranean world, including Egypt and Persia. His conquest took him as far as the Indus River Valley, and he died at a very young age. We're going to talk about him a little bit more now. The Macedonians viewed themselves as Greeks, but shared much of their culture. King Philip II hired a guy by the name of Aristotle, we've talked about him, to tutor Alexander. Therefore, Alexander was very intelligent. Alexander was 20 years old when he became the king of Macedonia. He proved to be ambitious, a really smart military leader. And once he came into power, he decided to expand the Macedonian Empire. Alexander began his conquest first by crushing the Greeks in a revolt that took place in the city of Thebes. He ordered the death of 6,000 people, as seen here on the slide, and sold everyone else into slavery. He was brutal, but he convinced other Greeks not to rebel. Alexander the Great's empire he was now setting his sights on Persia and the Persian Empire. He began to attack by conquering Egypt. The Egyptians viewed him as a guy who was liberating them from the control that they were under, and this became a positive thing. In 331 BC, he attacked Darius II, leader of the Persian army, and destroyed the capital of Persepolis. Alexander led an army down to conquer into India. After taking the control of the Indus River Valley, his troops begged him to go home. Alexander the Great went 13,000 miles and never lost a fight. However, after being away from their families for over 11 years, his troops were homesick and they wanted to return home. By 323 BC, Alexander had conquered a massive empire, and he began to plan how he was going to govern it and unify the kingdom under his control. Unfortunately, he got sick. At age 32, he died, and quickly after his death, his empire began to fall apart. How big was Alexander's empire? This map shows you the United States of America, and it stretched further than the United States did. He left behind an important legacy. This legacy is what we call the Hellenistic age, or the Hellenistic culture. He spread Hellenistic innovations and culture throughout his empire. Each territory he conquered, he left behind a city named after himself. In Egypt, he had Alexandria. The Alexandria in Egypt was the most significant of the cities and best represented the Hellenistic age, the blending and spreading of Greek culture to other parts of his empire. Alexandria became the center for Hellenistic culture of not only the Greek Empire or Alexander's empire, but the Mediterranean world itself. He had a museum, a library built there to preserve the different scholarly articles and things that were being recorded. He also helped preserve the cultures of Egypt, Persia, and India. This is a picture of Alexandria, Egypt. You can see there's structure to it, well organized. This timeline shows Alexander's successors after he died. So, in summary, you can see in this slide, Alexander was a military genius, extremely well educated by Aristotle. His interest in Greek history and culture, as well as Persian, Egyptian, and Indian ideas, helped with the idea of the Hellenistic age, or the culture of Hellenism, that shaped future civilizations as we know it. People learned a lot from what Alexander the Great has done in history. But his empire didn't last long enough to compete with the future empires, such as the Roman Empire and that of the Mongols.